All right, well, without further ado, I'd like to welcome up onto the stage for this afternoon's first presentation this afternoon, Hazel Woodcock and Alexander Hill, and they're going to give their presentation on the development, operation and support of a systems engineer. Thank you.
Hello. I'm going to move to where I can see things, particularly the timer, so I don't overrun. Alexander's going to keep us in check. So we're going to do some fairly lengthy introductions because this paper is a case study of the three of us, and Kitty unfortunately couldn't be with us today. She couldn't make it up here, but we're going to go through the case study and the learnings from that. So starting with introductions. So I'm Hazel Woodcock. This is it's the word cloud from my ESEP application, so it's a couple of years out of date. This is my career. It's quite varied. I started out as an electrical engineering graduate in the defence industry, was doing systems engineering from day one, didn't realise it for quite some years. I'm an accidental systems engineer, but as I say, when I put my ESEP application together, I realised that from day one I'd been doing systems engineering. So solidified that knowledge with some learning later on, and that's got me to where I am today. Moving on to Alexander.
Yeah, so I'm Alexander Hill, and I'm the route 2 for our presentation today. So I went to university to study actually a Master's of System Engineering, and that was at Loughborough. I started that in 2015, and throughout my degree I covered a whole range of the technical processes from ISO 15288, but also a really good grounding of all the other sort of engineering and technical aspects around that. So I'd say it was quite a well-rounded degree, and I got a really good experience of the engineering world, but also quite a lot of the system engineering world. I was also lucky enough to do a placement whilst I was on my degree, so I was with Jaguar Land Rover, and I was in their powertrain research department, so very much mechanical engineering focus there, not much system engineering at all. But after my degree, I joined Costain, so that was in 2020, as a graduate on their graduate scheme. Throughout that, I covered quite a few different areas, quite a variety. So we've got some decarbonisation stuff, we've got some route to net zero, quite a lot of process modelling, and now I'm actually on SCS, on their system safety team. So there's quite a lot of variety, and despite all that, on my word cloud, systems engineering still comes out quite strongly. It wasn't rigged, it actually was from a CV and a case study I did for Cozy. But that's enough about me. We've also got a bit of a case study about one of our colleagues, Kitty, today, who's also an author of this paper. And first thing is, Kitty is from a non-technical background. Her first degree was actually in Hungary as a PE teacher, and she moved to the UK in 2011 after getting that degree. And since then, she's actually obtained quite a lot of experience in the retail sector. So most recently as a manager in the bakery chain Greggs, and as well as starting a family. So Kitty joined STRABAG, which is one of the S's in SES in 2021, and that was as a business administrator apprentice, so a level 3 apprentice. And she was actually placed within our system engineering team on SES, and that was where Kitty was actually talent spotted by Hazel and a few others. So Kitty then completed that level 3 business administrator apprenticeship with a distinction, and then jumped straight on to the level 7 apprenticeship. That was a system engineering apprenticeship at UCL. Kitty actually, of last month, she actually achieved her ASEC certification, so you might have seen her name pop up on the slide at the award dinner last night. But looking more closely at sort of Kitty's word cloud, you can really see her story from her time at SCS. So we've got technical process modelling, we've got some management, and we can see other things throughout her career as well. So these introductions are a little bit longer than you might have expected, but Hazel's going to give a bit more context about what we're actually talking about today.
Thank you. So the context of why are we even looking at this as a problem? Why is this interesting? We've got a shortage of systems engineers. We've got a shortage of engineers, and there's a government report that shows STEM vacancies of 173,000, and that's 49% of engineering businesses have got open vacancies. We certainly have had difficulty in recruiting and finding enough people. There's also that 30% underrepresentation of women in engineering, which is, regardless of what you think about whether we need to encourage women in engineering and whether that's a good thing, we need to encourage people into engineering, and we're losing a large chunk of the talent pool, potential talent pool, by not having full representation from all the groups. So just one quick question. Can I ask for hands up if you are currently recruiting with open vacancies or in a team where you have open vacancies? Thank you. So that's not quite unanimous, but yeah, there's a lot of people are struggling to recruit at the moment. The pipeline's too long. If we take the Alexander route, you've got to enthuse the 5-year-olds about engineering. You've absolutely got to enthuse the 16-year-olds to get into the right school courses, to get onto the engineering degrees. And then you've got to get through that course. You've got to get a couple of years under your belt before you start to become really valuable as a systems engineer. It's too long. So we're looking at other ways of doing it. And I know for many years, the UCAB have had a focus on recruitment, how we recruit, and the pipeline. So what happens to all of those systems engineers that we do get? We have them coming in through those 3 routes. So the route 1, that's me. Route 2, that's Alexander. And the route 3, which is Kitty. The numbers on here aren't researched. This is just a pretty picture. So some of us progress all the way through our careers as systems engineers, and that's great. But then a whole load of people don't. Eventually, we all retire one way or another. Some leave the profession. Some become technical specialists, and we lose them out of the systems engineering world to become deep technical specialists. Some return to the general sort of engineering, revert back to civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. And some transition into management, quite a few transition into management. If they haven't done that by their mid-career, then they very often do that towards the end of their career. We lose some into academia, we gain some from academia, so there's a kind of balance there.
So how do we get more assistant engineers in? Well, we can either make them or buy them. So let's talk about buying first. So when buying in system engineers, we ideally want to buy someone who's about 80, 90% or more in terms of competence, or someone you might refer to as a guru or a journey person. And our colleague Mark here will discuss those terms in a bit in his session later. But it's basically someone who can hit the ground running and get involved straight away. Obviously, we realise it's incredibly unlikely that we will get that fully completed R-skilled. There's always some learning to do. There's a new project, new people, or a new context to actually apply system engineering to. So there's always an element of making in one way or another. At SCS, we need to fill quite a few different vacancies at a few different levels, and we found that we needed to be innovative in our recruitment, as there's a clear need that we cannot buy in enough engineers to support our needs and the team's needs. So we've supplemented that traditional recruitment with a program of making more system engineers. It's pretty well known in the UK that system engineers have come from other engineering or STEM disciplines, so that route 1 like Hazel, and I'm sure many of you in the room here today. But more recently, since like the mid-noughties, you've got university courses that have been able to take the school leavers like me directly into a systems engineering career. So that's the route 2. And then there's still not enough of us. Like, how many of you just put your hands up saying we need more people? So that's now why we have the level 7 apprenticeship, which sort of formalises that system engineering education of your practicing engineer while you still continue to work at that 80% full-time equivalent. So in the HS2 London Tunnels project, which we're both working on, we've identified several individuals who don't see themselves as engineers, but have those natural aptitudes to develop as a system engineer. Kitty is one of those, but there are others that we know of, and either they know it or they don't know it yet. So if you were asked what are the components of a system engineer, what would you say? So we've identified 5 components and used these graphics in the style of RUP diagrams, so rational unified process, if you haven't come across these. But basically, we're looking at these to show the rate at which we are learning these components throughout a career. We also note that we're using real data up until a point, and then obviously we've got to extrapolate that where appropriate. So first up is the system engineering knowledge, and that's really all around the theory of system engineering. So we've got ISO 15288, we've got the NCOSE handbook as our core sources, and then you've also got the NCOSE knowledge exam as well. We have general engineering, and this is our wider engineering theory from other engineering disciplines. You've got civil, automotive, mechanical, electrical, and the list goes on. We've got system engineering skills, which are the practices, the methodologies, the tools, techniques that really enable us to use our system engineering knowledge. We've got professional engineering behaviours, which are the general behaviours that you find in that professional engineering environment. And then we've got our applied experience, and that is really the implementation of all of those during our career. So Hazel's going to give a brief run through of what her route looks like. So, Hazel.
Yep, I'm taking the prompts. So from typically age 18 to 70, I appreciate some people start earlier, some people start a little bit later, but taking from 18. My general engineering knowledge as an electrical engineer is that second one down, where there's that big lump of work. As I went to university, I learnt a lot in a short time. Systems engineering, I was learning stuff, I just didn't know what it was I was learning. So I was learning about the systems engineering early on. I've been learning since, and that is a continued thing. Systems engineering skills, again, I was doing that from fairly early on without knowing that was what I was doing, but still it's there. The professional engineering behaviours is when you get into the workplace in an engineering environment, you learn to challenge, you learn the behaviours of engineering that is different from perhaps the behaviours in a publishing world or in retail in Kitty's case. But there's a little bit at the front there, which is the industry placement, then the big culture shock of starting work in engineering. And we're always learning, because the world today, the professional engineering behaviours expected today are not the same as the ones when I graduated. So there's a constant learning all the way along. And then the applied experience, and again, that is constant. Sometimes you get a little peak of, I'm doing something new. So it's a very sort of peaky thing. There's a lot less extrapolation in mine than in the other two. However, there's quite a lot of sort of guesswork. It's not scientific. It's meant to be a picture. So.
Yeah, so back to me. So this is accurate up until a point. I'm only 9 years into my 52-year career, probably longer by the time I get there. But yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I did a system engineering degree with a placement, so straight from the get-go, I'm learning lots of the system engineering and general engineering theory. After uni, I did a graduate scheme, which really allowed me to develop my general engineering quite a bit further. And since I moved from more of an automotive focus into the infrastructure world, there's a hell of a lot of new things to learn there. My system engineering skills, I would say they developed in like a slight sort of lag behind the knowledge, as this is the putting into practice the theory that I've learned, the methodologies, the tools, techniques, and it's that experience which really builds this skill. And you can also see where I've changed role or had an increase in responsibility from jumps up on these graphs, as well as in that system engineering skill bit, as well as the applied experience. For professional engineering behaviours, I mean, you get a little bit of experience, as you mentioned, on the university placement, and then as soon as you enter the big bad world, it's a huge jump until that becomes sort of the new normal, and then it sort of tails off. So that's a quick overview of my route. A little bit about Kitty's route. So having a look through these graphics, you can see there's a gap in the system engineering knowledge and the general engineering knowledge, and that's because Kitty hasn't been exposed to these until she really joined SCS and started that degree apprenticeship program. For the system engineering skills, we do believe that Kitty would have had exposure to those at some point in her career. She probably didn't know it at the time, And that's why I've got that small rise there, and as well the applied experience, because she probably was applying these behaviours and skills at the same time. For Kitty's professional engineering behaviours, Kitty probably will come across probably quite a few of these, and to be fair, that graph should probably be a little bit higher, because there are still quite a lot of transferable skills that's just not in the engineering environment, but that was our main focus for this. But yeah, and then a big jump once Kitty joined into SCS and in the business. So we've seen the routes individually, but and the stories they tell. But if we look at them, comparing them. So first of all, let's have a look at the Route 1 General Engineering versus the Route 2 Systems Engineering. And, it's Hazel's electrical engineering degree and a placement versus my systems engineering degree and a placement. So there's no big surprises there. Basically, the colours are just flipped about. Next up is the professional engineering behaviours. So looking at these across all three of us. Routes 1 and 2, pretty much the same, got the same experiences, early career. And then Route 3 starts learning those professional engineering behaviours at the start of their career, because as I mentioned, there are some transferable skills there, and then it picks up rather dramatically. Looking at now Route 2 versus Route 3, so that is, if we start off at the top with the system engineering knowledge, there's a delay in Kitty's case, and that's obviously because she didn't have any of that knowledge or any exposure to it until she really started that degree apprenticeship programme. Again, for general engineering, it's since Kitty's doing it on an apprenticeship versus what I've picked on in my degree, Kitty's line is going to be more spread out and lower over a longer period of time. For the professional engineering behaviours, I've mentioned that already, and then for the applied experience, they're all pretty similar looking. So Kitty did get that small amount of experience when she joined, or a small amount of experience in system engineering skills, but she didn't know, she learned and applied them. So these are all of our routes and how they compare. But if you just take a moment to think about your journey, what would your personal career look like up there? Where would your peaks and graphs be?
Okay, just to make sure everybody's still awake. That's after lunch. It was a good lunch. Hands up if you are, broadly speaking, Route 1, a STEM degree or a STEM initial education, followed by becoming a systems engineer, and that is, as I thought it might be, a goodly number of you. How many are Route 2 with a systems engineering first degree? A few, not a huge number. And how many are Route 3 where you've come in from something completely different, not a STEM degree? So a much smaller number. But it does happen. And I think that is the route that we really need to encourage to get the pipeline there, because you're taking people who are already in the workforce and training them up on the job. And that gives us, I think, the quickest route to making new systems engineers. So this is the diagram that's in the paper. I'm not going to dwell on it. You can't read it. Sorry about that, but you weren't intended to. So this is looking at Route 1, 2, 3, and if you look at the paper, then you'll see how we've put in there where you get the C-Eng, where you get the C-SEP. So it just kind of ties it in with the C-Eng and C-SEP. There's life cycle stages in there, and that's the life cycle stages of the systems engineer. Moving on to the next slide, this is the life cycle of the project, not the life cycle of what the project is trying to deliver, the life cycle of the project, and where the life cycle stages of the systems engineer can be supported. So in the early stages of, let's say, a large project, you've got the bid phase, you've got the setup phase. You want your experts in that. You want it set up right, you want it set up quickly. You haven't got a lot of budget to spend on training people. You haven't got time to train people. So you're wanting people who are well in their operation phase of their career. As the project gets set up, you come up to that sort of business as usual phase, and the project's ticking along. That point, you can bring people in their concept phase as systems engineers. You can take on the new graduates, you can take on the trainees, you can do the talent spotting and train people up. As the project winds down, then some of the people you had early on in their development phases or in their concept phases, depending on the project length, you've maybe got them kind of transitioning into their operational phase, and they can close the project down. They'll still have the mentoring of the people in the organisation who can support if there's anything unusual comes up, but they can get that experience of closing the project down. And that will make them more ready to be starting up another project, maybe a smaller project next time, but they can then be in that early startup phase of the next project. So focusing on the concept phase and the development phase of the engineers in the business as usual project running phase is really useful, because that's where you can really develop the talent. How do we do that talent spotting? Royal Academy of Engineering paper, I think this is a relatively well-known paper, it's referenced in the back. We're looking for systems thinking. What does that really look like? We're looking for awkward questions. We're looking for open-mindedness. We're definitely looking for curiosity. Resourcefulness. Visualising. Somebody who'll draw a picture for us rather than just expanding in words. What we found with Kitty in particular, she was asking very awkward questions. And she totally failed to understand how people could just not get this. Why do they not understand? Because some of the things we were talking about, the systems engineering concepts, seemed natural to her. She's wired as a systems engineer. She wasn't trained as one at that point. So we took that natural talent that we'd found and we've trained it, and she's now on that level 7 apprenticeship with UCL. So what are our pipelines? We've got the still ever-present need to enthuse children, young children, about engineering and what's possible, and the fact that, as somebody told me when I said, why would I do engineering when I was totally at a loss as to what I should study, what can I do as an engineer? They said, you can do anything. You can make a difference. And I think that's why a lot of us have come to engineering at all, to make a difference. If we enthuse the children, the small children, and keep that going, that's really good, but it's a really long pipeline. If we start to enthuse those 14, 16-year-olds, it's still quite a long pipeline, and that's not the one that I'm focused on, but I'm still very passionate about that needing to happen. It's just I can't focus on that one. The one that I'm focusing my attention on at the moment is finding the natural talent out there, people who, for whatever reason, didn't take up a STEM subject or an engineering subject when they were at school and when they were in their early career. There's a huge number of different reasons why people don't do that. But to find that raw talent and then build on that and educate it. Currently working on a level 3 apprenticeship for systems engineering, which I'm hoping to get going next year. And that will give us a systems engineering technician. We don't have one of those in any sort of formalised education at the moment. So let's look at the takeaways from this. We need to recruit, and we saw earlier, most of us in the room need to recruit. We need to look at all of those pipelines in order to do that. Once we've recruited, we need to protect that investment. We need to get that professional development there. So get your CEng, get your ASEC, get your CSEP, do the professional courses, the specialist courses. So that professional development is really important to keep people. But to make it a career and not just a job, we need to retain that talent, and that's about career development. So putting people in the right opportunities, giving them a change when they need a change, giving them responsibility when they need responsibility. And that's really easy to say, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to find the right opportunities within the organisation to move people around. If you move somebody into a new role, you're leaving a gap behind you. And we've said we can't recruit, so we're leaving a hole that we're going to struggle to fill. So it's really hard to do. It's really easy to say. We still need to try. And we are trying. We're actively trying. We don't always succeed, but we are making that effort. And part of that career development is making sure that we get people to these sort of events. So we've had 2 papers and a tutorial here from from SCS this week. So we are really trying.
All right, so before we do some questions, I just must signpost you to our colleague Mark Tickner's paper today, which is titled Bridging the Gap, Development of Early Stage System Engineering Roles. And that's where Mark looks at a variety of team roles which you all should be very familiar with. So you've got team leads, gurus, journey persons, and it's how to develop the people in these roles, the competencies around them. But until then, I guess thank you for listening, and any questions?
Good afternoon, Luke Hampton from Leonardo. Thanks very much, really useful insights. I was just curious a little bit from your graphs of where you see some of the more human-centric skills fitting into it. Did you see it fitting under one, or is it something that is separate from that as point one question? And my second question is around what recommendations are you working on at the moment for doing some of more of that, converting other people? I'm just more curious of what you're looking at.
So when you say human-centric skills, are you talking about the sort of facilitation and communication?
Absolutely.
So that's part of that is the professional engineering behaviour. It's partly in the systems engineering skills, and it's the behaviours more than anything. We put in together a really high-level summary. I think systems engineers generally are good at asking really awkward questions, and as engineers we might not be the most out there extrovert sort of group, but once you give us a technical problem we'll dig until it's answered, and we'll ask why a million times, never mind the 5 whys. We'll keep going if we don't get the answers we want. So yeah, that's in the behaviours, I think. In terms of, what was the second question, how we're doing this, how we're
So your route 3 you were looking at as more of someone that's come from a different background. What sort of options and recommendations have you been looking at to do more of that? I'm just more curious about what you've been looking at. Thank you.
So, I mean, part of this is about just raising the profile of the discussion. Like, obviously, internally, we've taken Kitty through in Cozy ASEC. She's on that UCL course at the moment, and we're basically trying to see if there's anyone else who we think would be appropriate to go on that. So it's more informally, but I guess in terms of what you can do in Cozy is get everyone involved in the early careers. It's not just graduates; it's anyone who's early to systems engineering as a discipline is more than welcome there. You've got the various apprenticeship schemes as well, so not just the people in work, but the level 3 and level 5s there.
And I've got my eye on at least one project manager. I've had my eye on a number of civil engineers. There's a few people, as I say, some of them know that I'm targeting them, and others don't know yet. But then it's just about explaining what we do and how what they're saying and how they're asking questions actually fits with what we do, bringing them into the world slowly. And if they take out of that a very small piece of our systems engineering world and a very small amount of understanding of it and go back to their original discipline, we've still won, because we've still got somebody who understands a little bit more about what we do.
Hi, I'm Amir Morris from Atkins. I'm one of the people who came in your third category. In my case, it was after medicine. I became basically a physician, a specialist physician, and then a systems person, etc. My question in this, or more of a suggestion, is there are a number of areas which are seen as specialist systems engineering areas. Human factors, system safety are the classics, but there are others where we've got people who are starting on the path, but they don't have the generalist systems engineering. I would have thought that they become the easy, low-hanging fruit in a sense if you can get them to swap over. And I know that in terms of the recruiting that I do, that's definitely one of the areas that I look at, but I'm assuming that there are others who have experienced it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the system safety world, and I see quite a few different people who they don't know it, but they're doing requirements engineering, and the system safety risk management all goes along with it. So yeah, I take your point, and it's a useful one for everyone else to hear as well. But these specialist disciplines, you do find a good bit of system engineering hiding amongst the technical specialists, as they're probably would refer to be known as.
They do occasionally find something like a Z1 on their desk. So yes, absolutely take your point. We've got, in the team that Alexander's in, we've got a deep specialist well into his career as a rail system safety specialist. Incredibly talented chap. Doesn't think he's a systems engineer. I'm working very slowly on him. But it's only to kind of educate him on what he is. Not to change what he is, just to tell him what he is, so that he can then maybe spread the word a little bit wider. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Derek Price, Network Rail Consulting. I'm curious, your organisation, SCS, looking outside, how have they observed your efforts and to see the impact of the investment and how have they observed that in turn? And has that helped or hindered what you're trying to do?
We're a weird organisation. We're a joint venture, so we're not one organisation, we're three. Four if you count the whole thing. So we're three parent companies. We are one SCS. Day to day, you don't need to know which parent company people belong to, but then occasionally it matters. You can't access something on the intranet and you find somebody from a different parent company. It matters at that point, but it also matters a little bit in terms of what the hoops are that we have to jump through to get the training, to get things signed off. We've got an organisation-wide SCS, actually HS2 commitment to running apprenticeships or to supporting apprenticeships. HS2 want to do 200 in I don't know how long, but there is that push to get people on apprenticeships. So that is viewed very positively. I think we are, because we're in infrastructure, we're systems engineers, we're not the popular kids, but we're fighting the battle. And that outreach of picking the project manager who's wired a little bit like a systems engineer and bringing them into the conversation, into those, we occasionally run a program where we'll discuss bits of the handbook. So we've done a couple of times where we've worked through the handbook chapter by chapter with meetings. We're not running one at the moment, where we invite anybody and everybody, and we've had all sorts of different people come along who aren't systems engineers and will never be systems engineers, but they're showing an interest. And I think just that broader understanding of what systems engineers are is actively helping us.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions on the floor?
Hi, Tim Breaksby at WAE. Development and retention is, I think, quite linked to coaching and mentoring in terms of moving through your career and understanding what you're doing. Under the guise of stealing what you can, are you stealing other coaches and mentors to help those system engineers? Because obviously that funnel of system engineers gets smaller in terms of engineers that are good at coaching and mentoring. So are you stealing other coaches and mentors from the other bits of engineering to mentor those engineers?
I mean, I come from a tennis coaching background, so it comes to me quite naturally. And so I haven't. Hazel obviously hasn't to steal me away, so I've been in her team since day one. But no, it's a good point that you raise. I mean, you're from the manager perspective, I guess.
We haven't. We perhaps should look at that as to where we can get coaches and mentors. At the moment, Alexander is coaching, mentoring one more through ASEC.
Yeah, one.
Having already coached Kitty through. Kitty on the UCL course is using both of us. I'm officially her mentor. She's also using Alexander, who's been through a similar program of work. We've got somebody else on that same UCL course who I'm officially the mentor for. We've got other people in the organisation who are experienced systems engineers. And we're taking, basically, if you're a page ahead, you can mentor somebody. We've got Mark in the team, who's a CNG assessor, advisor, and everything else. So yes, we have got quite a good team for that, but absolutely, I take your point that we should cast the net wider.
Thank you.
Hi there, Matt Jones from BMT. So two slightly separate questions. So firstly, we've sort of taken a similar approach to you have in trying to bring in those in the business and outside who aren't systems engineers but have got all the right skills and don't know that they should be systems engineers. But we're also trying within the business to recognise those people who we think are doing a lot of systems engineering, but they won't admit it and won't hear it if we tell them. And trying to be the owners of those skills and the promoters of those skills within the business, rather than trying to bring them into the team. So really just looking for your views on trying to be the owners and the promoters of the right skills, rather than grow the team and formally convert people to systems engineering. And then secondly, do you see the approaches you've proposed as a short-term solution, while ultimately we try to look for that long-term focus on the pre-university education and try to influence ultimately government to say, if the first thing in the UK you can do is, when you're 16 doing an apprenticeship, or when you're 18, 19 going to university, the first course you can do with the word engineering is then, isn't that ultimately the problem, that until we solve that, there's always going to be a problem?
Yes, we are looking at the short-term fix. We haven't got enough engineers. We need to do something about it now. From discussions in the UCAB, I know there are a lot of other people who are looking at that much longer term, the from childhood pipeline. So that's why I'm not addressing that, because I know other people are looking at that, and it is hugely important to get the children enthused about engineering, ideally about systems engineering. But if we all focused on that, then we wouldn't have anything else. And as I say, I know people are working on that. So yeah, absolutely. I think there was another part to the question that I've missed.
So the first bit was really just about trying to, rather than convert people to systems engineering, to position ourselves as the authority on systems engineering skills. And so in our own business, we have a lot of naval architects who, from my point of view, are just systems engineers. Just they know a lot about boats. And they do a lot of the skills that we would all recognise. So rather than tell them they're systems engineers, we're trying to help them build those skills, but they stay within that sphere of naval architecture. And yeah, so there's just a slightly different approach that sort of maybe balances and sits alongside what you've already described.
So we have got a lot of people who are doing bits of systems engineering. When I say I'm targeting people and I'm claiming people, I'm not claiming them from a line management point of view or even a dotted line management point of view. I'm claiming them from a kind of from an INCOSY point of view, that are you aware there is a whole community dedicated to the stuff that you are good at, where you can talk to other people who understand what you do and how you think. So it's not about converting them and giving them the title systems engineer. It's about bringing them into, not even the mindset, they're already there, but bringing them into the world where there's a supportive community, and that, again, we can all grow from that.
Great, thank you.
We've probably got time for one, maybe two more questions. I'm going to go over this side a little bit because I think we've...
Hi, Steve Ashland from Kinetic. Just, I don't think you've mentioned it, but as a profession, if we're going to want to try and recruit system engineers from other professions. Have you come across, in your experience of this, the sort of we're going to have to compete in terms of reward and sort of career path? So have you noticed, for example, if we want to recruit promising project managers, that their saying, well, I'm really interested in system engineering, but actually my progression is opportunity is better in project managers, project management, so I'll stay in there, thanks very much. That sort of thing.
That's always going to happen. There's a work-life balance. What do you enjoy doing? If there's bits of project management that really get you down, even if it's paying you really well, wouldn't you rather just come and play and do the things you really like doing, which is systems engineering? And if you're wired as a systems engineer, then that's probably going to be the case. We also lose systems engineers to project management because actually I'd rather have all the project management things that are really exciting because I'm super organised and do whatever magic project managers do to make things better. I don't know what they do, but it always seems to work. So, yeah, it's always going to be a problem. There's, I think, probably less of a problem between engineering disciplines, but again, there isn't total parity between engineering disciplines. And then you take some of the specialist domains and they're going to pay a little bit higher. Not everybody's going to move into those because, again, not everybody's going to be able to spend their 35, 40 hours a week dedicated to that without absolutely tearing their hair out. So, yeah, totally get that's a challenge, but I think that's market forces.
Okay, we've got time for one more.
Paul Davis. I'd like to build on what Steve has just said. You do need a certain level of corporate cultural support to this because, yes, project management is seen as a route to success. In defence and aerospace, it has basically become known that a good systems engineer is worth as much or more than a good single discipline expert. Within civil engineering, perhaps that's not the case. Okay, so what level of high-level support have you got within Costain and SCS in the wider sense?
So I can't speak so well from within SCS because that is 3 organisations, and at that level we are separate companies. So within Costain, we've recently gone through a salary grading thing where they've looked at market rates and put some clever stuff together and sorted out the band so that it's equitable. We have, I think last time this was done was 2 or 3 years ago, and certainly at that point the discipline had input into that to say this is what a systems engineer is, this is how much we need to pay for one at this level. And the bands, we've got quite broad bands. They're sort of 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1 ratios on the salary within a band. And we had input into that market rate to say, you know, this is what we need, and we cannot get that for pennies. We need to pay a sensible amount. And then as you interview, you get some people who come in and say, oh, but I want £10,000 more than you're paying, and some of them you say, okay, it's not going to work then. And others you think, well, actually, no, that kind of is the going rate. We do need to go back to HR and get this increased. And we do have some movement, some support for that where we're struggling with market rates.
That's not quite what I meant. The salary bands are one thing, but it has to be seen at engineering director level that it is as valuable or more so than a civil engineering specialist. Sorry, just using yours as
so engineering versus project management is not a problem in Costain because the leadership is largely civil engineering. But civil engineering to systems engineering, one of the things that helps us is that we can be a chartered systems engineer, which is to UK spec, so it is exactly the same competence level as a civil engineer, as a mechanical engineer, as any other chartered engineer, and bringing that parity. And I think actually IFSI will help us on that, as opposed to INCOSA UK, because it's more recognisably in that same group, institute of or for something engineering. It fits the pattern better, and I think that will start to really help us.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Hazel and Alexander. Please, everyone, give the appreciation.